Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Football Unfiltered podcast. We are joined here with Liam again for another week of Football Roundup. Liam, how are you, mate? All good?
Yes, mate. All good. Looking forward to this pod. Um,
Uh,
been a busy week, but yeah, how are you, mate?
I'm all good, thank you. Yeah, all good. I mean, it's been a busy week for football as well, hasn't it? I think it's not just been a busy week for both of us, but football world has taken a bit of a hit with a lot of managerial changes too.
Yeah, I think we got quite a bit to delve into today, which we good.
Yeah, that's good, isn't it? I think without further ado, we should get started. And over to you for some of the weekly news.
Yeah, so I'm just going to touch over a little bit of the manager news because this week there's been throughout the whole football league. There's been quite a few sackings this week, so I just wanted to go over them. So first of all, you got the Russell Martin sacked from Southampton after his 5-0 defeat at home to Spurs. What a shocking game that was for Southampton fans. That was awful for them to watch. Um, Vital Pereira has also been appointed as the new manager of Wolves after Gary O'Neill's sacking. Um, so that's going to be an interesting appointment because, by what I know, Pereira's not at the best of managerial careers so far. So it's an interesting one. Uh, going down to the Championship now. Des Buckingham sacked by Oxford. Um, I don't know how I feel about this one. I think Des Buckingham's done so well at Oxford. I think this is just. I think it's a wrong call. I think Oxford fans are as well saying it's a wrong call. But
That's
Gary
Boyhood
Rowett,
Club as well, isn't it? Boyhood Club.
exactly.
There's Buckingham, which I found out this week. That's interesting.
But Gary Rowett is um, the favourite for the job. Proven manager in the Championship. See how that goes down if he does get appointed. In League One, um, Bristol Rovers sacked Matt Taylor after a 2-0 defeat to Birmingham at the weekend. I think it's a bit harsh sacking him after a Birmingham game. Tough game. But Lee Cattermole has taken over as the interim manager for the time being. And last but not least, Gary Bowyer has taken charge of Burton Albion. So that'll be an interesting one. He's had a long career in the managerial game. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on at Burton Albion.
That's a massive week, really, for football. As far as football manager sackings go, that's four in one week. Two obviously coming from the Prem. There's been a lot of things circulating on social media about the amount of English managers in the Premier League these days. You got any thoughts on that? I know that you quite like an English manager, don't you? You wanted one for the England job. Is there any preferences for you in the Prem, which you think maybe more English managers to be in there?
Do you know what? No, I don't too much mind about the Premier League. I want the best coaches in there. Um, England's a different story. I really wanted an English manager. Let's not go into that. The job it's been done now. Thomas Tuchel, I'll back him, but I just would have loved to have had an England manager, an English manager. Um,
Yeah,
but I think Danny
that's fair.
Rule, uh, Sheffield Wednesday manager, is the favourite, and I love what Danny Rule has done at Sheffield Wednesday. He took over that club when they were in dire straits, looking set to go down, and he has turned that club around. They sit currently ninth in the Championship. He's done wonders with very limited um, resources and with an owner of Chanziri who is just a crazy owner. Let's just put it that way. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
think
think that's fair
he
to
would be
say.
fantastic appointment at Southampton.
Yeah,
Um,
that's. I think he would be as well. I think he's kind of what they need. He looks into some good young prospects, doesn't he? And they're probably in need of in a bit of a refresh at Southampton, considering they have such a terrible start this season. And then bowing out of the cup last night as well to Liverpool, it just doesn't help, does it? It's all against them at the moment. It feels backs against the wall. Um,
yeah,
but I think now if we move away from the managers, we've obviously got a lot to touch on this evening. We've got a few games that we've picked out from last week and a few more for this weekend coming. But we're going to touch on a little bit of player news now. I've obviously you and I have been chatting throughout this week on the Marcus Rashford situation. Team news has just come out at the time of recording that he has been left out of the United squad to versus Spurs tonight in the quarter final, which is it's quite big considering that he's said he's basically open to a move. He's looking for new options. How do you think that Amarim's going to feel about that?
look, Amarin came out saying that he does still want Rashford, but I think Rashford's got a he's like, don't get me wrong, he's a great footballer, but his attitude, and I don't think he's got the best people around him, supporting him. And I just feel like at the moment he's not right at Manchester United. He needs a fresh change. He needs a new start. And I think January, I don't think he's going to get that move. I think he's going to have to wait till the summer. But I feel like a move away from Man United would do him and the club a world of good.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think, as we said, we're going to blitz through some of the news now. I'm going to take over from it, just talking about the current player issues in the Premier League. Rashford for for 40 million. There's probably quite a few clubs around the world which would take them for that. If there's anybody listening that has any recommendations who you think Marcus Rashford may go to, please do feel free to let us know. We want to have this podcast be as interactive as possible. I think clubs like PSG maybe would be having an eye on Rashford there. Another big one for a Premier League winger is Mudryk failing a urine test this week for unprohibited substances in his wee, effectively. So I think that's a big one for not only the club. Chelsea are in such good form at the moment. I think for him as a player, he never really found his feet. And if it is true, he's obviously come out and he's pleading his innocence and saying that he would never have intentionally taken something that would have enhanced his performance or anything like that. But I think it's a massive thing for Chelsea Football Club to. It's kind of thrown them into a little bit of a situation which they didn't need. They've just found a new run of form, a great manager in there at the moment, picking up points, winning in every competition they play in, and now they've had this little bit of news, which I don't think it's going to really impact them too much, but it's one of those things you never really know how it's going to impact the squad's morale, considering they all might feel that they're going to be fully under the watch now of the FA and everybody and the governing bodies. But then moving on a little bit from Mudryk and another Premier League attacker. It has been blowing up this week for Premier League attackers. Cunha is facing a ban for his behaviour last weekend. I think for me, it's totally unacceptable. I get Wolves are in such a terrible position. Sack their manager, new manager coming in. But for players to react, how their whole club has been reacting is just not what you want to see in football. You get the argy bargies, you get the the high emotions on big games and stuff like that. And when times are tough, you get players reacting. There are only human at the end of the day, but the way he reacted was a little bit obscene. It was a little bit childish, I think. And for a player I thought he was having a very good season, and now he is facing a potential few game ban. He's kind of only shot himself in the foot there. But we'll have to see. There's a lot going to be happening over this Christmas period. We know if many football fans are listening in, it's Christmas period is the biggest and busiest time of the season for players, managers, owners. You're moving into January. There's a lot of action to be happened moving forward just before February time, and then you look at the back end of the season, which is arguably the most important part when it comes to staying up and promotions too. So it's a big back end to the year, I think, for most clubs in the Premier League. But yeah, without further ado, I've said that again. God, it's not going well for me today. We're going to now move on to our predictions from last week. Liam, we'll start with yours.
Yeah, so last week we obviously we both predicted the four games that we chose. Unfortunately, none of us won. Um, but
that
we're just
was
gonna
written, wasn't it?
quickly go over the games that we picked last week. So starting in the Premier League, you had the Manchester Derby, which we both picked Man City, but more worries for City as they took a 2-1 defeat um, at Old Trafford. It's worrying times again for City. It's a brilliant result for Man United, and they thoroughly deserved that win. Um, and it's hope for Man United fans. There's hope that, and hopefully they can use this as a stepping stone for the season and start climbing up that table a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think I've never really had anything against United. They're one of those teams that you always can kind of respect. They've had such a good history that if they are now to pick up and finish in the Champions League spot, I think that only says enough about the club for them to be moving in the right direction. But again, I just quickly want to touch on City. They've had one win in their last 10 coming against Forest, who are admittedly in very good form, but that was kind of a needed win and a necessary win for them at that point. But what we touched on it last week, but I think again we have to quickly just talk on what do you think's got to change at City? It's not going to be Pep, I don't think, and I don't think many of the players are lacking ability. What do you think it is?
To be honest, I don't think we're going to see any sort of change this season. I think now this City team, all they're going to be looking for is to finish in that top four. Um, I I don't know what the problem is there. You've got players aging, um, but again, Rodri is of course a massive miss, but not enough for this Man City side to crumble like they have.
Yeah,
Um,
that's true.
so I don't know what what the future holds for City. I know for a fact that in the summer they will build again. They're in that rebuild process, and I'm sure they'll be back up there fighting next season. But for me personally, right now, again, like I said last week, are they? Do I think they'll win the league? No. Are they still in that title race? I still think they are because it's Man City still. But something
Yeah,
has to
I
change
agree.
drastically quick.
Yeah, I think, and last thing before we move on to our other predictions from last week is we've got to quickly touch on Amad Diallo. How good has that boy been? He's lighting up the league at the moment.
Yeah, what a composed finish for that second. It's a brilliant touch. Um, I do think Gvardiol could have done better on the line, but no, he's lighting it up. He lit the floor up on Sunday. He was brilliant to watch.
Do you think he'll get a move, or do you think he'll happily stay? Because there was obviously talk a couple of seasons ago. He was in and out of Sunderland. He was gutted on Instagram via his posts, and now he's kind of found his form at United. Do you think he'll stay, or do you think he's still in the back of his mind thinking, I could do a bit better than this currently. I've got world class talent."
Yeah, look, he was brilliant at Sunderland last year. Watched a lot of him last year. But no, United, United's where he'll be for a couple of seasons. I think needs to. He's still young. Needs to stay a bit grounded. Needs to stay at City, at United, and just work on getting better. And you never know, United might be one of them teams challenging next season. So yeah, I definitely think he'll stay.
Yeah, fair enough. And now we're going to touch on the league that Sunderland are currently playing in. We predicted last week Norwich versus Burnley, and we touched on a little bit about Burnley's current success and how well they're doing, and also that up and down Norwich form. They did in fact lose Norwich. They lost 2-1 to Burnley last week. What do you think were the main takeaways from that and your prediction? How close were you in the end?
Well, I obviously predicted a Burnley win. Um, I said to you last week that I don't believe Norwich are one of them teams to be competing up there. I thought Norwich actually played quite well. Um, Burnley took their chances really well. An unbelievable goal from Fleming. It's such a great
Yeah,
finish. For Norwich to go, what I think for me, Norwich went 1-0 up too early.
yeah.
but
Story of your life with QPR, isn't it? Love
you,
an early goal and then love to
you
bottle it
you
near
look
the end.
at you look at Norwich now. I think they're going to need a really good run to be pushing into that playoffs. Anything's possible, isn't it? There's still plenty of game time to go, but again, I think Norwich, although they did lose, I do think they can take lots of positive from that game. And touching on Scott Parker, said to you last year, performs in the big last episode, performs in the big games. He knows how to get the job done.
That says most about him as a player as well, doesn't it? Because he was always quite a good player. He's a grit player. He got his team over the line in the end. And then a little bit more on Burnley, just before we do again move on. We want to try and wrap through our predictions from last week to then talk about this weekend's fixtures, which is obviously the most important thing, and probably the reason why some of you are actually listening in today. Um, Touch on Burnley in the top two. Do you think it's still possible? Leeds obviously fine form. Sheffield United don't seem to be dropping much points. Do you think Burnley is still going to be up there come the end of the season?
Well, you look at it as on Saturday, Leeds very lucky to get a point against Preston. Um, they've closed the gap between them and Leeds. At the moment, I think Burnley are probably going to get into that top two for sure. They're edging closer. And yeah, Leeds, they're, they're not as consistent. They're a bit, they're not winning games convincingly when they do, and I just feel like they're not they're not getting those consistent results. They're dropping points at games that really shouldn't. Um, and that's why I
Yeah.
think Burnley might just scrape them. Sheffield United, though, I think look in fine form, look really dominant in games, and I think Sheffield United have definitely got a chance of winning this league this year.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping you didn't actually talk about Sheffield United. That's why I kind of kept the attention to Leeds versus Burnley. Obviously, Plymouth fan myself, and we've we've just watched our old goalkeeper pull off a masterclass against us, and we were absolutely not at the races that day. But that's something we're going to touch on a little bit later on in the episode. We're going to talk about both of our personal clubs, kind of give a bit of background as to why we support the teams we do and how they're currently doing. But yeah, I think it's one of those where the top four currently separated by 5 points. You've got to add Sunderland in there. We were talking about Amad Diallo and how good he was there, but they've not dropped off since he's gone back to United. He's continued his fine their fine run, and I think they're still in the shout of top two as well.
Yeah, let's yeah, definitely. Let's move on to the Stevenage game in League One. Just to be honest, Stevenage, what a shock performance! Really, they were the Stevenage of last season. They were brilliant, and it was an all round complete performance. Getting JB Reid on the in and amongst the goals, Dan Kemp continuing his goals, 5 goals this season. Um, and yeah, it was just a complete performance from Stevenage, and I think Alex Revett will be really pleased. I know for a fact. Stevenage fans are really pleased with that result, and hopefully this is a thing to come for Stevenage, um, and can start climbing up that table. Because last week I said I'm not sure where they'll be this year, but I'm really hoping that this year it will be positive for them, and they'll be finished hopefully top half, maybe even a push for the top six.
Yeah, I agree. I think Stevenage for me is one of those clubs. They just sit quite comfortably, don't they? Currently in the mid-table, they're 6 points adrift from playoffs. They're also then a good. I think it's about 6 points as well from relegation. So they're sat smack bang in the middle. They are 12th as well. I think pushing for playoffs might be a bit of a tall order, but again, like you say, it's anything can happen. And then we touch on Stockport as well. That was probably a bit of an unconvincing result for them, wasn't it? They were probably looking to take 3 points there, keep them up with the top four. Now 3 points separate them. With a game in hand for Sunderland, it's probably Sunderland, Huddersfield. It's probably one of those which now seems a bit more of a tall order to finish in that top two rather than the playoffs.
Oh, definitely, Stockport won't be in and around that top two. I don't even think they'll. Like I said to you last week, they're a brilliantly run club, but they lack a lot of finance. Their next few run of games quite tough. They got Peterborough uh, in their next game, which I think is a really tough game. Really tough game. Um, and then Huddersfield away. So they got 2 really tough games on the back of a defeat to Stevenage. So be interesting. Be
Definitely
very
will be,
interesting to
yeah.
see if they can hold on.
It will be been interesting for you. Like I say, Christmas period's so busy. So I think for most clubs, even if there's any Stockport fans listening in, which I probably doubt there is at the moment, but we're fully going to be watching the Stockport results because they are a team that I think would be nice to see in the Championship one day, wouldn't it? But then moving on to a team that has lacked since we were talking about them last week. Wimbledon then picked up 3 points against Doncaster in a result which we both predicted, I think, a Wimbledon win, or I may have predicted a draw. You predicted a Wimbledon win. So we were pretty confident they'd pick something up. We just didn't know what. You're going to run us through now, aren't you? The news from that game.
Yeah, really, really close game, actually. A narrow game. You could tell it's 2 good sides in that division. Um, Matt Stevens with the only goal of the game with his 11th goal of the season. It was such a sloppy mistake from Doncaster, which led to the goal. And again, fine margins. One mistake. But Wimbledon defended really well in the game. Doncaster had some really good chances, but so did Wimbledon. Um, and you know what? I think on the whole, a draw would have been a fair result.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, Wimbledon took that one chance, and yeah, it's interesting one now in the league. Really,
That makes him top goal scorer as well, doesn't it? Matthew
makes him
Stevens.
top goal
He's
scorer in
yeah,
the league. Yeah,
he's now top goal scorer, which is probably an achievement. I reckon he'll want to continue his fine run of form. So those were our predictions from last week. Those were the games that we wanted to touch on. If, like I say, if anybody has any predictions or games that they would like us to talk about in future episodes, please do let us know. We're more than happy, and we're always open to take some suggestions from any potential listeners as well. But we're now going to move on to our this weekend predictions, aren't we? The 4 games we've picked were Spurs and Liverpool. probably the biggest game in the Premier League this weekend. We then have QPR that we're going to touch on for it being your club. Going to touch on Plymouth for a little bit in the Championship. Then the game we've picked from League One being Wycombe versus Bolton, a massive game there. And then League Two, Notts County and Bradford, a mid-table scrap, we'll call that. But yeah, starting with the Prem, we'll touch on Spurs first. We're talking about their 5-0 win against Southampton, which ultimately saw Russell Martin sacked. Do you think they've got enough to win this game, Spurs?
Attacking wise, Spurs have got enough. It's how they're going to break that Liverpool defense. That Liverpool defense has been quality this year. Um, Obviously, it helps. We'll touch a bit more on Liverpool later, but with Robertson after the red card. Um, but yeah, I think Spurs, it gives them massive confidence. I know it's only Southampton, but they were clinical, and it was just an all round good performance. And his style of football, he's not going to change it, is he? Um, you know for a fact that Spurs are 100% going to concede a goal in this game. And if you're a betting man, I would definitely bet on both teams to score because I think this one's got goals in it this week.
Yeah, I agree. I think as you touched on Anne's style of football, who would you say in that Anne's style of football? Who would you say the key characters are? Because you look at the defense currently, it's very very weak for Spurs. Mickey van der Ven, Romero, both injured again with slight knocks, which for sure has not helped my fantasy football. We'll talk about that later on as well. But who do you think the key characters are in that squad?
Yeah, just going on from what you said as well. They've also got Richarlison, who's out injured as
Oh,
well. So he won't be out. He'll be out for the fixture.
oh no!
But
I'm sure Spurs fans are very disappointed that Richarlison's going to be out there, Liam. I think that was the comical side of you coming out, wasn't it? Yeah.
do you not remember his goal in that game? I think it was last season or the year before. His
I
two
do.
goals at Anfield.
I do remember it, but unfortunately for the Spurs fans that are here, I don't think deja vu would have struck if he wasn't injured. Unfortunately, I think I've seen better footballers playing in League One, League Two than I have Richarlison, and that's nothing against him. I just don't think that he's cut out for the top six, let's say. But yeah, back onto the top three players that you have to nail on in that Spurs side. You're the manager. You're Ange. Three players that have to start for you in this game this weekend. Who would you say?
My number one is James Madison. Obviously, um, been really good this year. Um, I just think James Madison can carve open a defense with just one killer pass, and I just think he's so effective. Um, and Spurs really miss him when he's been out the side. Dom Solanke, he's going to bring hopefully some goals for Spurs. 5 goals this season. And obviously the main man, Heung-min Son. I think he's
Yeah,
going to be really important. Um, but I also just want to give a little mention to Pape Sarr. I think he's been really good this year for Spurs.
I think he's one of those that goes quite under the radar, doesn't he? Nobody ever really picks up. Nobody ever's talking about Pat Mate Sarr, but he always performs. He's always on that team sheet when he's fit, and when he is on the pitch, he gives it 100% from minute 1 to minute 90. I don't think I've seen a player in recent years run as much as him. He's back, he's forward, he's everywhere on the pitch. He's a fantastic footballer. Um, but we're now going to move on to Liverpool because we touched on the Robertson and key players for Spurs. Who would be your three for Liverpool then before we talk about the Liverpool news from this week?
I'm definitely going Salah. I really think Kanate. I think Kanate's an unbelievable centre half, and he's really good last year. But I think he's really stepped up this year. And I'm also going to go with Gravenberch. Think last year really struggled in that 6 role, but this year Arnie Slot's got something going with him in that 6 role, and Gravenberch looks like a real player, real player.
Yeah, he's good. He's another one like Sarr. He's a little bit. I'd say he's a little bit more technical than Sarr, but again, he's just everywhere on the pitch. He's always on the ball. He's always wanting the ball from teammates. He can find a pass. He's a very quality player. I'm now going to actually mention who I would pick from Liverpool because they are slightly different to yours. Spurs ones are all but the same. I would Madison, Son, Solanke. I think most people would agree. But mine for Liverpool, Salah is a no brainer. He's pivotal. I think Gakpo current form. Admittedly, he's not had the season that he's probably looking for in the Prem, but I think he's just a quality player all round. His first touch passing, he can have a decent strike here and there. I think he might be quite pivotal for this weekend, considering he is fit as well. And then I'm going to go for Canate as well, actually. So it wasn't too much difference, but he's just pivotal at the back there. He keeps a good job. Um, he keeps the ship sturdy, doesn't he? When they've got a little bit of a lackluster back line at the moment, they've had a few injuries here and there. Robertson red card. Canate is just always there. He's always a presence for Liverpool in the back. Um, I now want to talk about, obviously we're trying to keep the fixtures and the predictions to the end, but if you had to predict a contract negotiation, how's it going to go? Who would you prefer to keep if you're a Liverpool fan? Would you keep Salah or would you keep Trent?
For me, I would Trent.
Trent? Good. I'm glad
Yeah,
you said that because
I
I
see a
fully
lot
agree.
more in. I think in the long run with Trent, I 100% missing either of those players is and getting rid of either of them is huge for that Liverpool side. But I just think if I was to look in the long run, I think the Trent Alexander deal, Arnold, bleh, Alexander Arnold deal would be a lot more beneficial in the long run for Liverpool than Salah would be.
I agree. I think we're seeing Salah kind of he's on fine form this season and probably has got another season in him that's going to be exactly the same as what he's performing like now. But then you're going to start to see him wilt. You're going to start to see him perform a bit less, a bit lower quality. That might be a bit harsh to say, but I don't think he's going to be able to continue that form through into the next 2-3 season. Whereas Trent is probably only going to get better, which is what most fans are kind of expecting from him. But then there's been a few murmurs as well that Trent is potentially open to a move away, but that's all Instagram talk and paper talk at the moment. So we don't actually know what's really going on at Liverpool until we can hear some more solid from some reliable sources, let's say. But
Yeah,
did you
definitely.
want to take us on to QPR now? I know they're obviously your chosen
Yeah,
team this
so
week.
so this week we've decided, um, just for this week, second week into the podcast, we're going to actually talk about our two teams in the championship. Then we won't speak about them. It will move on to the next teams. Um, but yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about the QPR Preston game. Two teams coming into fine form. Uh, let's start with my team, QPR, unbeaten in six, 4 wins, 2 draws. Really, really good start. Um, uh, start, but um, Marty's really turned the form around this year. Um, home form's been a massive problem for us over the last um few years, really. Um, but we've just won our last two at home, and we'll definitely be looking to build on that um this week.
A win takes you above Preston as well, doesn't it? So you've really jumped out of that relegation, especially if you do win this weekend. That'll be massive for you, considering you were 4 points behind Plymouth at one point.
Yeah, a win takes us above Preston, but Preston again. I'll touch a little bit more on them in a minute, but unbeaten in six as well. Um, but I look at as well QPR. We've now got Chair and Frey featuring on the bench. I know Frey hasn't come on yet, but Chair's been getting 20 minutes in the last two games, so that's really positive for us. Um, disappoint disappointing performance, I'd say, against Bristol. Not the result. The result's a brilliant result, or 1-1 draw. I would have taken your hand off before that game, but the way we played that first half, it was not good football, and we were lucky to go in 0-0. Brilliant goal by Paul Smith. Um, but again, this squad is just slowly starting to come together, and it's really good to see. We've got some young lads coming through. Alfie Lloyd, who came on and played really well against Bristol. You got Ryan Colley, comes on against Norwich, scores 2 goals, gets an assist against Oxford in the week a few weeks ago. So yeah, really, it's really looking up for QPR at the moment. And we've got quite a tough running, I'd say, over Christmas. Really, Preston. Then we go into Swansea on Boxing Day, and then we go into a run with Norwich, Watford, and then Luton. So quite quite a tough back end to this month. But something that we definitely won't be scared about.
Are you doing many QPR games coming up? I know you obviously were both season ticket holders at both of our chosen clubs, but you doing any over the Christmas period?
Yeah, so I'm at Preston
Nice.
on Saturday. Um, I will be at the Luton and the Watford game.
Perfect.
So
Busy Christmas period for you as well.
busy Christmas period, and then um, but yeah, I want to touch on Preston though. Um, unbeaten in six. Okay, five of them are being draws, but they've still got a really good squad in there. They got a fantastic result against Leeds, um, and really should have held on for the 3 points. But um, they've got a great manager in charge, Paul Heckingbottom, who I think's obviously been a ropey start to the season for Preston, losing Ryan Lowe, your favourite man. Um,
Don't yeah, that's God. And in dire need, we'd actually probably take him back. Well, some Plymouth fans definitely would. I definitely wouldn't. But yeah, Ryan Lowe, God,
but
that's a
yeah,
name.
losing him at the start of the season after one game sets the sets the season off a bit a delayed start. Let's put it that way for Preston, but definitely think this squad's definitely capable of climbing up the table. They're usually mid-table, aren't they? They're a mid-table side every year, but they got some good players. Josh Bowler, former QPR player, had that brilliant spell at Blackpool in the Championship a couple of seasons back. Um, my only positive going into this game as a QPR fan is they've only got one win away from home all season. But knowing QPR will gift them a second.
Yeah, that's optimistic from you as well, isn't it? That's the optimism coming out that you will not be seeing 3 points this weekend. They're also a bit of a draw merchant team, aren't they? The last six game they've won one. Admittedly, that was their first away win of the season, but then they've drawn the last five from
Y-
out of those six, which is it's not bad. Draws can potentially keep you up in the championship, but do you think Preston fans they're probably wanting to take a few wins, a few more wins, let's say?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I think, um, to be honest, in their next three, in their next five games, are quite generous for them. They got obviously Preston. They've got us on Saturday, and then they look at Hull on Boxing Day, which is a place they could really go pick up 3 points. Sheffield Wednesday, I know they've been really good this year, but they're still capable to be got at. And then West Brom, tough away game, but then they got Oxford as well at home on the 4th of January. So definitely in the next five, we could see them climb up the table.
Yeah, and it's like you say, championship is always one of those leagues which is so close, so you can never really pinpoint it until the final day. I mean, we Plymouth, we're going to move on to them now. I'm going to take over from you. We stayed up on the last game of last season, so it's an emotional time for us. And this season has not been what we painted it to be. Let's say second season in the championship, we thought it would be going much better than what it currently is. We have conceded the most amount of goals this season with 42, and have scored the least with only 19. So there's a lot to be said about Rooney and his managerial tactics and his decisions that he does make. Admittedly, like you said at the beginning of the QPR talk, we don't want to be dragging this out to be just a QPR and Plymouth podcast, but obviously it's going to be a bit close to our heart considering we both support those teams. So for me, it is actually it's a really terrible season for me so far. Uh, I would say I've not enjoyed, in fact, watching Plymouth at times. The football's been pretty lackluster. Players just not performing to the quality that we've seen, even when they're in League One. There's players now who I saw perform in League One much better than what they are now in the Championship, and I get it's a bit of a big step up. But one win in the last 10 is insane numbers. Like we should be taking teams at home, especially home park was a fortress for us for many years, and we're just letting that atmosphere die purely because of the fact we're letting everything that surrounds the club currently worry the performances on the pitch, which I get it's difficult not to do, but it's it's really worrying for Plymouth. Um, Obviously, we've had Morgan Whittaker out injured with a foot injury, which may have been a good time for him to have a bit of time off because obviously nobody ever wishes an injury on somebody, but he was struggling for form before his injury. He then got a bit of a minor foot injury and has now been out for a couple of games. So maybe we can see him back and amongst the squad. Then maybe he can start picking up some of the form we saw from him last season. He only finished a couple of goals behind Sammy Schmodix in the end. So you kind of want to find that, especially as a Plymouth fan. We need to see some results from somewhere, and I'm not sure if this weekend against Middlesbrough will be unfortunately where we get to see that. And I won't be sadly attending this one. I will be doing Oxford though on the 29th. But yeah, that will be my last one before the end of the year, before we then move into an FA Cup game against Brentford, which is going to be a tall order. But yeah, just a little bit about our opponents this weekend. We're playing Middlesbrough, who are sixth currently in the league. And one of my notes to actually bring up with you was, do you think they've still got the potential to come top two? I personally don't think so. I think it would be a tall ask for them, considering they sit 8 points behind at the moment. But again, never say never with the Championship. What are your thoughts?
Really like this Borough side. Um, Watched them absolutely demolish us at home. Um, I think Carrick is a very underrated manager. Been there for a few seasons now, and I really think that this Middlesbrough squad has what it takes to finish in that top two. I know they're far off it now, but I really do think they've got the potential to be battling up there. They had a really rough start, couldn't find the back of the net, but I now look at this Middlesbrough team and I think, do you know what, they could definitely be up there. They've got a massive game against Burnley on the 29th. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on in that game. But their next four games are Plymouth away, Sheffield Wednesday at home on Boxing Day. Definitely a place that they can pick up. Then they've got Burnley and Hull, and then Cardiff. And then so for the next 5 games, they've got quite a good running.
Yeah,
I
it's definitely a
really think,
few points, isn't it, there?
yeah, I really think they're definitely going to be up there if they can keep this form. They've got some great players, Finney Emmanuel Latte Lath. Um,
You're
yeah,
picking
they've
them
just
tonight, aren't you? You're doing it just to. You're on the wind up. I think you've named Ryan Lowe. You've named Finn Azaz. I think your next one's going to be touching on Stephen Schumacher, isn't it? Finn Azaz coming back to haunt Plymouth. I think this weekend he's having the season of his life, isn't he? But yeah, I don't really have much more I can say about this weekend, considering this season so far has been so dismal for all Plymouth fans, to be fair. I don't think there's a single Plymouth fan out there that is seeing any positives really from the way we're playing, in fact. So in fact, I don't really want to talk about it much longer. I think we should move on to a bit more of a lighter subject, lighter game, and probably a much bigger game for both teams involved, to Wickham and Bolton in League One. What are your thoughts? Who do you think's going to be winning? Who do you think's going to be standing out massively? Um, yeah, what are your thoughts on this game?
well, I'll quickly touch on Wickham and Bolton, and then I'll pass over to you to have your say, really. But let's start with Wickham, the home side, top of the league. Um, a really convincing win over their former manager Gareth Ainsworth's Shrewsbury side. Um, they've been so good this season. I've really been impressed. It's been a different Wickham to what we've seen over the last few years. Wickham have been very inconsistent over the last few years, but this season you're really seeing uh, consistently good. Keep saying the word consistent, but you're just seeing a really good Wickham side. Um, and attack wise, brilliant. Defensive wise, brilliant. I just really like um, what this Wickham side are doing this season. I think all credit to Matt Bloomfield. Was very much linked with a few championship jobs over the last month or so. Um, but yeah, really impressed with his style of football. And can they keep it up? I hope so, because I'd love to see Wickham back in the championship. Um, Obviously, League One's tough ass with a lot of big sides in that league. Um, but I definitely think if they can keep this form going, and make some additions in January, they could definitely be challenging for that top two.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I agree.
hope, hopefully for Wickham, they will finish at least in the playoffs, which I'm sure they will. I don't think it's going to be too much of a ask for them to be doing that, um, considering the situation they're in now. But yeah, definitely really enjoying watching Wickham at the moment.
Yeah, and like I say, playoffs is definitely was probably the aim at the beginning of the season anyway. They've just have considered they've just had a considerably great start and great half of the season. They sit 13 points in playoffs. They sit. Let me just get the league up. In fact, because I've just completely lost my note there. They sit 2 points clear of Wrexham in third, but Wrexham are again one of those teams who we've seen a lot from. They've obviously got quite a bit of money behind them. They probably can still challenge for Wickham's spot up there. But like I say, they have just impressed all round. We're now going to touch on the visitors in that game, Bolton. They didn't have a great derby day, did they? The other last weekend, losing to Wigan. You can imagine some of the fans, Bolton fans, were probably very angry after that. But all in all, it's not been a terrible season for them. They're again a fallen giant who probably would be thinking to themselves they should deserve to be in the Championship. But that's unfortunately not how football works. History doesn't necessarily keep you in tall orders and posts. But they're probably a team that will be looking for playoffs come the end of the season. Um, what do you think of Bolton's start and obviously their Derby Day defeat to Wigan?
For me, I think it's a really poor result for Bolton. Fans calling for Everett to go, Ian Everett to go. Um, it's I don't know about that, but he's not. Obviously, he had a good run when he was Barrow manager. He's not quite hit off how Bolton fans maybe would have wanted. Obviously, losing um, playoffs last year was a big was big for Bolton, and they wanted to bounce back this year. It's not quite been the best of starts for them. Uh, the potential of this Bolton squad, they've got such a good squad, and I definitely won't. I will say this now: I don't see them not getting the playoffs.
Yeah, they've got 2 games in hand as well, don't they? So they're not comfortably out of it. They're not sat mid table. If they win their 2 games in hand, admittedly a club in front of them, Reading, do have another game in hand on them. So they've only got 1 game in hand on a couple of teams in playoffs. But they win those, they do go above Stockport. They can jump into fifth, potentially even fourth if Huddersfield have a loss this weekend. So they're really not out of this battle just yet. And I think we seen recently, we saw Ange Postecoglou. I know we touched on Spurs a minute ago, but he was saying in an interview this week that managers aren't given long enough. I think that's across the board in every league at the moment, especially in English football. I think it's easy for fans to go, that's not the style we want, that's not the manager we want, sack him. And it's easy for managers to kind of just get lost in the wind a little bit, just jumping from club to club. Um, so I think if they are to sack him, I think it would be a bit of a silly decision, considering, like I say, they are still very much in that playoff fight. But we'll have to see, won't we? It's like I say, I'm going to continue touching. Obviously, we are near Christmas. Pretty exciting time for everybody, and hopefully the viewers are looking forward to Christmas too. But for football fans, this is the biggest part of the year, and I'm truly looking forward to it. Good few games on every day of the year, so it's going to be busy for all leagues and all teams. And then talking
Yeah,
about teams that's going to be busy with League Two.
I, can I quickly just touch on one more thing about Bolton?
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, it's
I
fine.
do think Ian Everett has been given enough time, and I wouldn't be shocked if Bolton come away with a defeat this weekend, and he is sacked. Lots of rumours going around. I've seen from a couple of Bolton sources this week. Is Tony Mowbray has said that he's looking to get back in um, after his spell out due to illness. Um, And there's lots of rumours that maybe Tony Mowbray could be the man to take over at Bolton. I
That
think
would
that'd
be
be a
massive, wouldn't it? Yeah,
I think that'd be a really smart appointment. But I don't know if this is just things being thrown out there. But I think that'd be a really smart appointment for them. But of course, Ian Everett is still the man in charge of Bolton at the moment, so we'll just see how this weekend goes. Could
yeah.
be it's anyone's game.
It is anyone's game. That is true. And I mean, as quickly before we do move on, Tony Mowbray, he's a man of the Championship and League One, isn't he? So he knows the game quite well. And I'm sure Bolton fans are probably quite excited the fact that they've still got the potential to look elsewhere if all things do fail with Ian Everett. But yeah, over to you, mate, for League Two, our final game of the week before we do some predictions and touch on a little bit more before we do round up today's episode.
Yeah, we've decided Notts County versus Bradford City. There wasn't many standout games for me this week. Um, but I picked Notts County, two teams, both on 28 points, 11th versus 10th. Two teams that are probably looking to try um push into those playoff spots. But it's both teams coming into this game out of a little bit of form. Let's just put it that way. Um, so yeah, it's going to be an interesting game, quite probably a cagey affair. Um, but both teams sit 3 points off the playoffs with a game in hand. So definitely, this is a huge game for both sides. Touch a little bit on Notts County first. Um, they've got some really good players in there. David McGoldrick, um, he's firing in goals this season at the moment. Um, but yeah, Notts County are without a win in 5. Um, but a positive for Notts County is they haven't lost a home game in their last 3 games.
That's
Um,
that's a pretty good stat as well, isn't it? That's not
yeah,
a
but
home.
they are off the back of a quite heavy away defeat, 3-0 loss to Salford away from home. But they've got some brilliant players. They've got McGoldrick, they've got Geordie Jones. Like, they've got a few standout players in their squad, and I think that Daniel Crowley, really good ball playing midfielder. Um, so yeah, I think they've got the potential to be a side that push into that playoffs.
Hmm. I
But
think
they've just not been consistent enough.
we're touching on
This
touching on teams and consistency. Both all of the League Two teams currently sit very, very tight to each other, and I think that is just down to inconsistency, isn't it? Talk about Bradford massively. They are struggling a bit away from home, but again, this is a real 6-pointer this weekend. Both teams sit 3 points out of the playoffs, playing each other, and then they both have a game in hand on those teams in playoffs. What do you think the manager's going to be saying in the changing room before the game there?
both teams are going to be going for it, I think. But I do also think there's going to be a case of a very cagey game. Um, but yeah, it's going to be a really really interesting game.
Yeah, I
How do you
agree.
think it's going to go?
I think we're going to do our predictions in a minute, aren't we? But I do think that it's going to be one of those where I'd love to be a fly on the wall for both manager team talks there, because it's do you throw everything at it and try and get an earlier lead? Do you sit off and then let them come on you? Because it's all different manager tactics there. And like you say, it's a 6-pointer ultimately at the end of the day. They whoever wins this game both sat on exactly the same wins, draws, and losses. Whoever wins this is going to take a nice jump into the playoffs with a game in hand. It then lines them up to then potentially look at automatic promotion up into third as well. So it's going to be a massive one for both parties. And I think it's one of those games which I will 100% be keeping my eye on this weekend. Nice 3 o'clock on a Saturday as well. It bodes nicely for us watching some football, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think as well. Bradford, Andy Cook, he's a brilliant player at in the English league. He's been consistent over the last few years. But 18 goals this year. Not 18 goals. What am I talking about? 10 goals in 18 games. He's been really good in front of goal this year. But then you also got to look at Notts County, where they've got Jatta and McGoldrick on 7 goals. So I don't know which way to call this game this weekend, and that's why I picked it. I think there's lots of talking points to this game, and I just think could really kickstart both teams and could help them build a little bit and push into those playoffs.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. We must have a thing for goal scorers, because yeah, like you say, Andy Cook. We touched on Matthew Stevens earlier being the top goal scorer. Andy Cook is currently sat in second place, so that's an award which both players for their own personal trophy cabinets will be looking to try and snatch home. I think just quickly, I'm just going to touch on, because it is it's hot news at the moment. Premier League lineups tonight for the Carabao Cup game, Tottenham versus Man United. We're seeing a Spurs side which consists of Foster, Spence, Gray, Dragutin, Porro, Sarr, Basuma, Son, Madison, Kulusevski, Solanke. So you see all three players that we named for the Sunday fixture named tonight in Son, Madison, and Solanke. And then just quickly through the Man United team is Ulti Bianda, Euro, Lindelof, Martinez, Diallo, Ugarte, Ericsson, Mazraoui, Anthony, Fernandez, and Hoyland. So it's going to be a big one, which we'll unfortunately probably just be off live by then. So it will be a game that we're going to go down and watch together. But what would you say this helps? Does this help Spurs having a game?
Hold on, we ain't watching it together.
You're not watching it. You're not watching it tonight. You're
Uh,
not. No,
I'll watch it. I'll have a little
I knew
watch
you
with
would
you.
be watching it anyway. That's why I said it. Do you think this helps Spurs having a game this close to such a big fixture on the weekend, or not?
Look, both teams. All I will say is, that, yeah, it probably doesn't help as much. Liverpool have had the same.
Yeah,
Liverpool had, and I think Tottenham should really focus more. I know it sounds really stupid. Tottenham need to win a trophy. Both of these teams need to win a trophy. Um, they need to give something this season. I know Man United um, won a trophy last year, but I think this season Tottenham and United need to win something, and I think this is a great tournament for them, both of these teams to go try
yeah.
and win.
They come short this season, didn't they? Earlier on in the season with their Community Shield, but I think they're probably looking for their eyes on the Carabao as well because I don't think the FA Cup potentially will be their one. Europa League maybe. I mean, it will probably be Spurs versus them in the Europa League final as well. But yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting game tonight. And also when I said watch it together, I didn't mean literally watch it together, but I just assumed you'd be going down and you'd be watching the football as well. I mean, that's why we're ultimately here talking about it, right? So we can go down and at least enjoy the football after the recording. But so before we do end up this session, we're going to do our predictions again. I think it's only right that we do it. Are we having a £1 on it?
Yeah, we'll have a £1
Oh,
on it.
perfect.
Do you want
That's
to go through your predictions? Go through all of
yeah.
yours first.
Yep, yeah, fine. I'm happy to do so. So we're starting off with the Liverpool versus Spurs game. We're going to do 5 this week because we're going to do the QPR and the Plymouth games as well. Start with the Liverpool versus Tottenham game. I have gone for a draw this week. Pretty optimistic for me. If any Spurs fans have listened on tonight, I think you've got what it takes to potentially take a point there at home against Liverpool. But then we are also seeing a fine Liverpool team at the moment going head to head with a shaky Spurs side. So I think a draw is probably a fair result in the end. And then moving on to the Championship, I have gone for QPR to win. I think you've got what it takes, and I'm not just saying that because I have to listen to you chat all weekend, but I think you do have what it takes to potentially nick a win against Preston there. On to Plymouth. Well, I'm never ever going to say we're going to lose a game, so I've gone for a draw, and it's very optimistic of myself. I can't see it happening, but again, I'm not going to say we're gonna lose a game of football because that wouldn't. There's no point me supporting them if I think we're going to lose. So I've gone for a draw in the end. Moving on down to the Wickham versus Bolton game, which is Friday night, isn't it? So that's the earlier one.
Yeah, but
I
there's a
have
few
gone.
fixtures for
Yeah,
the League
so I've
One.
gone for a home win. I've gone for Wickham. Wickham win there. I think they have what it takes to see off Bolton there. And then League Two for me is. Well, let me load it up for us. My League Two prediction is Notts County. I think at home they're gonna take a nice 3 points against Bradford there, push themselves into the playoffs, and then look to maybe boost themselves on for another promotion. My odds are coming in quite extortionately at a 234 to 1 bet with with um, a draw for the Plymouth and then a draw for Tottenham as well.
Do me a favour. Take out that Plymouth draw and tell me what the odds are.
I knew you were going to ask that as well. So if I take out the Plymouth draw, it goes down to 47 to 1. So we will be whacking a quid on that. I will do that in the morning when we've come off the stream, so we can fully have a look at that and see if it's actually going to come in, or I'm going to be £2 down from 2 streams. Probably like you will be as well once you've gone through your predictions.
Yeah, look, I've gone a bit bold this week. I really think um, this actually could come in. I don't know why. First game, I'm going to shock a lot of people, but I actually think Spurs at home. I think they could do Liverpool this week, so I've picked a Spurs win. Reasoning for it, um, it's not a major issue for Liverpool, but Robertson out. Um, and I just think Tottenham are off the back of a 5-0 win, maybe off the back of a win tonight. Who knows what happens tonight? At home, I do think this could be a game where Tottenham win and Liverpool could fall up short. Didn't have a great result against Fulham. I really think this is a chance for Tottenham to go there at home to try and get 3 points. So
Yeah,
I have picked Tottenham to win.
fair
Bold,
enough.
I know.
Bold, very very bold. Your next one
Championship
bolder.
championship game. Obviously, I'm backing my boys. I really think we could uh, go put on a show on Saturday. So I'm going to put us to win, and I'll actually do a little score prediction. I really think we'll tear them apart, 3-0. Um, I really do.
Oh,
I really back this team. I think Marty's got something really good going. Um, and yeah, no discredit to Preston because yeah, they've been a good side this season. Well, ish. Um, but I think we're gonna just tear them apart. Um, on to the next game.
yeah. Can we not?
Borough, Plymouth Borough. Again, Borough. I think will cruise. Look. It wouldn't shock me if Plymouth got something though, a draw, because I have been impressed in some games with Plymouth at home park. I If this was Middlesbrough at home, I'm not even giving you a chance because you lot away from home
I
are
love your
shocking.
honesty, mate. Thank you.
But look, this obviously, like we said last week about Mike Phelan now um, appointed as the assistant, which I was led to believe that maybe Rooney was on the edge of sacking. Now that's coming. I don't know where Rooney actually stands at Plymouth, um, but I'm sure he's got to start picking up. And I think, yeah, home. I know at home part to Borough, it's a tough game, but I think Plymouth will try go for it. I think Borough will be too strong for this Plymouth side, so I've gone for Middlesbrough to win.
I
Um,
did not want to listen to that, Liam. That was not the answer I was looking for in the end.
I've then gone for in League One the Wickham versus Bolton game on Friday night. Um, I was I was in between here. I have gone for a home win for Wickham. Um, I think obviously Saturday's defeat for Bolton is a really disappointing one for them against their rivals. Um, and before I say anything more, did you see the celebration from Wigan players?
No, no,
All
I
running
didn't.
out all running out the tunnel one by one and giving a fist bump. I thought it was really embarrassing
Really
for me.
cringy. I bet. I do not even want to
But
watch the game anymore.
anyway. Besides that, awful result for Bolton. And do I see them picking up? It's going to be tough to pick themselves up against top of the league, Wickham. I wouldn't be surprised if they come out with maybe a draw. But for me, I think Wickham will be too strong for them. So I've gone for a Wickham home win on Friday night under the lights.
Yeah, fine. And your final one for League Two?
Final game in League Two, Notts County versus Bradford. Like I said to you, um, I think this one's going to be a really cagey game. Um, Obviously, they've got some players in some fine form, some good goal scorers. Could I see this game being a 0-0? 100%. Could I see there being goals? Yes. So, look, this game could go either way for me. Um, but for some reason, I've got in my head that this is going to be a goalless draw.
Fair
Don't
enough.
ask me why.
Yeah, they're not bad predictions actually. Apart from the Borough Plymouth game, then I think you're pretty spot on. Maybe there Spurs picking up some points against Liverpool would be nice for those Spurs fans as well.
Yeah, I think the Spurs one is my most out there shout. I just have this feeling. I don't know. I know you said last week Liverpool probably won't have it. What Liverpool? Everyone's saying they'll have a drop off, um, and you don't see why they need to have a drop off. I'm not saying they will have a drop off. Really disappointing result against Fulham for me. Fulham obviously a great side this season, but um, it's in the context of things. It is a disappointing result for Liverpool, and I just feel like Spurs. I don't know. I don't know. I've got a feeling. I could be wrong. It's a very Spursy thing to do to go beat Liverpool, and the
Yeah,
following week
yeah,
lose.
100%
But
it is.
let's see on the weekend, eh? So my
Let's
odds came to 64-1.
64-1. So that's not bad at all, mate. I'm sure we'll have a chat tomorrow morning about getting some of those on, so we can let the people know next week what actually did come in and what came through, if any. In fact, that kind of wraps up another episode, doesn't it?
Yeah, so we'll be filming obviously the Boxing Day special um on Monday. Uh we will be touching on the games that kick off on the 29th in that episode because obviously it's Christmas time. We're both traveling to see family. It's going to be quite hard to fit in a podcast straight in for the 29th. So we'll add them a couple of them games into that episode. So it'll be a slightly longer episode, and we'll be back with a full podcast for the New Year's Day fixtures. Is that correct, Cal?
Yes, yeah, that's correct. I think I just want to take this moment as well to thank anybody that has been listening in as well from week one, maybe now week two. We are going to try and keep this as consistent as possible, but I want to take this opportunity to maybe plug just some of our socials. We are on Instagram, TikTok. You can listen in on Spotify days after our records. We are then on YouTube as well. We do have some big things lined in the pipeline, including some guest appearances, face cams being live, and then maybe even some other videos regarding the whole podcast and Football Unfiltered. So again, that is YouTube, Spotify, TikTok, and then Instagram. Please do drop us a follow, subscribe on YouTube if you can. That would be much appreciated. And other than that, we wish you all to have a Merry Christmas. The next time we catch you will be on Boxing Day. Liam, over and out, mate.
Merry Christmas. Come on, you ours.